They tried to shut us down. Ed Buchanan tried to muzzle Wyoming gun owners. We fought back. We sued him in court, guys. We won in Casper. He appealed, and we had our day in court in Denver just last week in the 10th Circuit. Guys, watch this video for all the updates. Hey guys, Aaron Dorr here with Wyoming gun owners. You guys have been peppering us with questions. What happened in Denver in the appellate court last week? You guys, a lot going on. The first chance we had to cut a video for you was today. Here is the very latest. And I want to give you guys the context. So a lot of you know this, but in case you're a reporter who doesn't know, or in case you're a new politician who doesn't know, or in case you're Ed Buchanan sitting on the John right now in your judge's chambers and you want to get a good reminder, this is why we're here. In 2020, a whole bunch of rhino scumbag gun grabbers here in Cheyenne tried to push gun control. They pushed for fixed NICS mental health. They pushed for waiting periods. And the list went on and on and on. Wyoming gun owners went to work in the primaries that year to expose the records of all these scoundrels who voted against our gun rights, even though they were pro-gun Republicans. And as you guys know, we were wildly successful. All of them that we targeted with educational information were removed from office. I think maybe one guy escaped, but we have a long memory, so we'll see. They were destroyed. They were destroyed. The lead sponsor for this in the House was destroyed. The lead sponsor in the Senate was destroyed. All the guys in committee were destroyed. It was a done deal. And everybody in the establishment in Cheyenne freaked out, because if WYGO could do this in 2020, we could do it again and again and again. So the establishment hacks had the Chamber of Commerce file a complaint that said we did not comply with the state's brand new campaign finance law. That's what they said. And it was, of course, it was a leaked complaint. The media heard about it before we did. You know the story. And the Secretary of State, his demand was very, very simple. We had to disclose the names of our donors to the state of Wyoming, or we would face civil penalties via fines. Now, I want to be very clear on this. We're not talking about Secretary of State Chuck Gray. Chuck Gray has a long history of fighting for gun rights. He was not the secretary then. He is not the person that we are suing in federal court. We're talking about this little scoundrel, Ed Buchanan, Mr. Pro-Gun, Ed Buchanan. He is now a judge here in the state of Wyoming, as we all know, and he was the Secretary of State who came after us. He was aided and accomplished by Bridget Hill, our state attorney general. And of course, Bridget Hill is not elected. She is appointed by Governor Gordon. She takes her orders from Governor Gordon. So you can see exactly the kind of attention that WYGO attracted after you guys, our members, gutted the ranks of the rhino herds in 2020. So Buchanan comes to us and demands that we pay a fine, or that we surrender the names, your names, the names of our members. And we told Buchanan to go to hell. Said we would never give that information, and instead we paid his First Amendment tax. Again, not Chuck Gray, Ed Buchanan. Drill this name into your mind. Drill this face into your brain. This is the guy who came after us with as much intensity as you'd expect in California or New York or some other big blue state. So we paid Ed Buchanan's First Amendment tax, and the very next week, after I presume Buchanan thought he had whipped WYGO. Pretty sure they thought that we had cried uncle. Pretty sure they were convinced that we were cowed into the corner. Yeah, I don't think he expected it. The next week, we sued him and Bridget Hill and Governor Gordon and the state of Wyoming in federal district court. And our contention was very simple. This new campaign finance law was impossible for us to understand. It was hopelessly vague. It was obviously laid out by the rhinos in Cheyenne to ensnare organizations like WYGO. We could not make it out. We did not know what they were asking for, and we did not want to give up our donor names. And so we sued them in court, and that was the layman's version of our arguments. And as you guys remember, in Casper last February, we won our case in federal district court, and we thought that'd be the end of it. The federal judge said that WYGO was immune from this stupidity. He said the law was unconstitutional and we did not have to comply. All in all, it was a good day. But to be clear, we wanted a bigger victory. We wanted to strike the entire law. because WYGO is not only interested in fighting for gun rights for our members' sake, we want to expand freedom for everybody's sake. And if anybody's speech is restricted like this, if you want to print off 100 flyers in your home printer and pass them around your neighborhood about a candidate or an upcoming campaign, they want you to disclose who paid for it. It is way beyond where every other state or most states have gone when it comes to campaign finance law. So we want to not just get this victory for WYGO, we want to get it for everybody else in the state who prizes their right of free speech. But the judge only limited that victory to us. We thought, well, shucks, we got the win, not as big as you wanted, but it's okay. But in this man's voluptuous arrogance, Ed Buchanan, and aided by this Attorney General, Bridget Hill, on orders from Governor Gordon, the state of Wyoming did our work for us, and they appealed. And so we had a chance to go back into court and seek that bigger victory. And that's what we were doing in Denver just last week. The state of Wyoming appealed their defeat. We then also appealed the lower judge's decision to make sure that we could get into court and have our day. And we were there just last week in Denver. And I want to be very clear on this. And big shout out and big props to the Institute for Free Speech. IFS has been our legal partners in this entire lawsuit. This is me and IFS senior attorney Del Cold outside of the courthouse. It was snowing like crazy last week in Denver. Right after we walked out of court, they had been phenomenal in this entire proceeding. And here's what happened in the courtroom. I want to mention before I get into this, we have a whole separate video done, and we have the actual audio of oral arguments in a video you guys can watch. So I'm going to give you a layman's perspective, but if you want to hear the actual goings on, it's all there for you in a separate video on our page, and you're going to love it. But here's our perspective in court. So the state of Wyoming's lawyer gets up there to try and do his best to defend this undefensible, unconstitutional law. And just for some context, the 10th Circuit is, if not the most, is one of the top 2 most conservative courts in America when it comes to campaign finance law and the First Amendment. So we knew we had a good appellate court to make this case before. The state's lawyer tried. I'll give him credit. He tried, and the judges hammered him with questions. They asked him, they said, well, how does anybody know what this report, the regulation in Wyoming actually means? There's no date. So does WYGO report donors in a certain time frame, in a certain year, or for all time? How do we know that? How does WYGO know? They said, does WYGO have to report just the money they spend on ads, digital ads, radio ads, TV ads? Must they disclose part of their utility bills? Must they disclose their office rent? Must their overhead be reported as part of this very vague statute? And the lawyer, God love him, he said, yes, we have to report all of that to comply with the insanity of Wyoming's new campaign finance law. It went on like that for 20 minutes. The judges asked this poor lawyer a ton of questions. How does WYGO know this? How does WYGO know that? You want them to guess. One of the questions they asked this lawyer multiple times from multiple judges is, why didn't the secretary, again, Ed Buchanan, why didn't Buchanan simply write a set of regulatory understandings on how people like Wyoming gun owners can interpret this new campaign finance law? If he had done that, this would have been much easier, would it not? But Ed Buchanan didn't have time for that. Buchanan was too busy coming after WYGO members on orders from the establishment class here in Cheyenne, and he didn't do that. It was an embarrassment, frankly, if I was Ed Buchanan listening to that. The judges were also asking the lawyer, how does anybody, absent these regulations, how do they know the nuances of, must they disclose one donor for $1,000 who paid for a $1,000 ad? Can they disclose 10 donors who gave $100 to pay for a $1,000 ad? How do they know when must they cherry pick donors? How do they know? I mean, these are very basic questions. And frankly, these are the same questions that I was asking myself way back in 2020, trying to figure out, how do we comply with this stupidity? And no one could tell. And it was hilarious. The poor lawyer said, well, the groups have flexibility. they can decide what they think is most appropriate. And the head judge of the entire circuit court interrupted and said, what you say is flexibility, could, in my opinion, is uncertainty. And uncertainty means that WYGO could be dinged by the secretary's office if they get this wrong. So the idea that flexibility in reporting was a good thing, they laughed that out of the court. Again, this was an amazing thing to listen to. And I'm not a lawyer, but anybody with common sense knows that when you have 3 judges on this panel coming after you nonstop for your entire time asking questions, you can just hear it in the tone of their voice. They are not happy with this. They are not happy with Ed Buchanan trying to come after us. One of the judges said, is it true this is the first time the state of Wyoming has ever gone after anybody with this new campaign finance law? And the state's lawyer said, well, yes, as a matter of fact, it is. I mean, do you see how petty this is? Ed Buchanan, Bridget Hill, Mark Gordon, they wanted to shut us down because their friends in the legislature were screaming like banshees because we exposed them. You guys removed them. And they don't like that because you know what? If we can do it in 2020, we can do it in 2022, we can do it in 2024. They're never going to be safe. And they're right. And we did in 2022 again. Went out there, we exposed guys like Drew Perkins, he's gone. We exposed people like Senator Cost, he's gone. And on the list goes. So guys, that's what happened on the state side. Our lawyers made a phenomenal argument that the state's law is unconstitutional. It is hopelessly vague, and it is designed to weaponize the secretary's office against well-meaning individuals and organizations who simply don't know how to comply with the insanity of this scheme. It was an excellent argument from our side. And again, you can hear all the audio yourself. One thing that our lawyer mentioned at the very end of the arguments to give the court some context on how petty and how unconstitutional this is the fact that last year, after the federal court struck down this law the first time, the legislature not only didn't fix their problem, they made it worse. So whereas we had to pay a one-time fine of $500 in 2020, now the fine is $500 per day if you do not complete this impossible report. And not only that, they added criminal penalties to this report. So if you're in my shoes running WYGO going forward, not only are you risking $500 a day, I am risking criminal charges if I cannot interpret the stupidity of this law. And the judges were very, very curious about that fact and why the legislature went the opposite direction after they already had been smacked down once before by the district court judge in Casper. So guys, that's where things are. You must listen to the audio. It's going to blow your mind. You're going to hear for yourself how upset the judges seem to be about the state of Wyoming's position on this. Again, the nonstop questioning as to why Buchanan did this, why Buchanan would not give general guidance, why Buchanan would not have a Q&A hotline for organizations like WYGO to get advice. It was on and on and on. It was a bad, bad day for Ed Buchanan's political legacy here in Wyoming. So, guys, a huge thank you, as always, to all of our WYGO donors who made this possible. You guys have made this entire thing go because without your support, we never could have engaged at the lower level courts, let alone engaged here at the 10th Circuit. I cannot thank you enough. It is expensive. But, guys, if we lose our First Amendment rights, we will never be able to protect our Second Amendment rights ever again here in Wyoming. We're not going to submit to this tyranny. We're going to fight back. We're going to fight back here in Cheyenne. We're going to fight back in court. This fight never ends. Guys, join the fight today at joinwygo.com. If you haven't yet joined up today. If you haven't made a donation recently to help us in our legal battles, hit the link below. There's links there to help augment our legal expenses, guys. We'll keep you informed. The main question you're asking also is, when are we going to hear back from the court? Well, there's no timetable on that. It's possible, given the very sharp questions they asked, we might hear back as early as a couple of weeks, but it could be a couple of months. You never really know with this stuff. It's above our pay grade, frankly, here today. So, guys, we'll let you know once we hear more. Share our video, join the fight, and thank you so much for all of your support to date.